Welcome to Session 7, Safeguard. Today we're talking about a proactive approach to protecting your marriage. Safeguarding is about setting boundaries that keep potential threats at bay. Boundaries around things like finances, relationships, social media, and communication. Think of these boundaries as a protective fence around your marriage, a way to make sure we're creating a safe, trusted environment where a relationship can grow without external pressures or distractions.
That's right. It's like building a line that defines what we allow into our marriage and what we intentionally keep out. When we establish these safeguards, we're honoring our marriage, respecting each other's needs, and showing a commitment to unity. As it says in 1 Peter 5:8, we need to be alert because the enemy is always looking for ways to weaken our bonds.
Exactly. Safeguarding isn't just a nice idea, it's an active step toward making our marriage stronger and ensuring it can withstand life's challenges. All right, before we dive in, let's just be clear that boundaries aren't only for serious things. For example, I've got a strict one in place when my favorite sports team is playing. I'm just saying, there better be some real urgency to interrupt that game.
And mine, shopping. Let's just say if I'm in the middle of finding a really good deal of the century, it's best to give me a little bit of space. But all joking aside, we're here to talk about the boundaries that truly protect what matters most in our marriages.
So I remember back in our early years of marriage when I was working as an engineer. My job required a lot of travel, often with groups of guys, up to even 5 guys, who had different standards than mine. I'd think ahead about situations that I might face while on the road, like being alone in a hotel room or getting invited to places that could compromise my values, and to stay true to my commitment to Stephanie. I'd set specific boundaries that I would plan in advance to limit what I'd watch on TV in my hotel room and stick to going out to eat only with my coworkers, and to say no to any invitations that went beyond that. And I still try to practice boundaries like this today, especially on social media, where I'm careful about what I view to make sure it aligns with my values and commitment to our marriage.
And honestly, knowing Bill had these boundaries was such a relief. It gave me a lot of peace, knowing he wasn't just relying on willpower, but was actually intentionally making proactive, wise choices. We also made sure he had a stretch team around him, a group of people who could keep him accountable. This stretch team included a mentor he would check in with for wisdom and for guidance, which was a huge part of keeping those boundaries strong.
Absolutely. And it's not just about feedback from each other. Surrounding ourselves with a stretch team, a group of trusted friends, mentors, and couples has been essential on our journey. These are the people who help us see things from a fresh perspective, encourage us, and keep us accountable. Proverbs 11:14 says, "Where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety." Surrounding ourselves with the right people creates an environment where we can continually learn and be refined.
And for me, having safeguards has been especially important around social media and relationships. I have boundaries to prevent unhealthy comparisons and to keep myself from falling into a fantasy world that can distort my view of real life. This means being intentional about what I watch or what I read, making sure it aligns with my values that I want to keep strong in our marriage. And like Bill, I still have these boundaries in place to this day, ensuring that I not only follow content that uplifts, but also encourages me as well as our marriage.
And those boundaries, especially around social media, where temptation can sneak in so subtly, have truly been a game changer. It's about protecting our minds and hearts, making sure they stay focused on what truly matters.
And it's amazing how setting these boundaries doesn't limit us. It actually frees us to build this trust and security in our marriages. And now, with a little humor along with the way, we can appreciate the bigger picture of why these boundaries create for our marriages. See, boundaries are not just a modern concept. God created boundaries from the very beginning for our good. In Genesis, He set boundaries to separate day and night. The 10 Commandments are there to guide us towards what's right. In marriage, we can use boundaries to safeguard our relationship and protect it from potential threats. It's really about creating a space where love and trust can really flourish.
Exactly. Proverbs 11:2 reminds us that with humility comes wisdom, and humility helps us recognize when we need these boundaries. Safeguarding our marriage requires a humble spirit and a willingness to see where we might be vulnerable. So we can really put up those boundaries with wisdom and love. So let's talk through some of the specific areas where boundaries are important. Financial boundaries. One of the first areas we set boundaries in was finances. We agreed early on that any big purchase over a certain amount would require both of our approvals. This created transparency and unity in how we handled our finances. Relational boundaries. When it comes to friends and interactions with the opposite sex, we both agreed that our marriage would be the priority. We discuss openly if there's ever a situation where we feel uncomfortable or need to draw clearer lines. Having those conversations regularly really helped keep trust strong. Verbal boundaries. Finally, verbal boundaries are essential. We agreed to never use words that would hurt or tear each other down. And we made a pact never to use the word divorce as part of our conversation, no matter how tough things might get. We committed to staying respectful no matter how we were feeling. And then social media boundaries. Social media can bring up unexpected comparisons, temptations, and distractions. So we both have clear boundaries here. This includes what we view, who we follow, and how much time we spend. These boundaries help keep our focus on what's real and true in our relationship.
And those boundaries set a safe tone for communications. They're like guardrails that keep us on track even when things seem to get a little bit tense. So there's an importance of proactively safeguarding. And one of the big things that we've learned about safeguarding is that it's not a one-time setup. It actually requires us to revisit and adjust boundaries as our lives and our situations change. For me, having guardrails and safeguards on social media and relationships, meaning consistently checking in with myself, asking, am I letting unhealthy influences seep in? I make sure to step back and realign where needed.
So it's important to define safeguards for your marriage. Take time to discuss and document your boundaries. Use your mission portrait as a reference to see what aligns with your values as a couple. When you identify core values such as honoring each other, think about how it can influence your financial or relational boundaries.
So as you set boundaries, think about the areas in your marriage that might need more safeguarding. Maybe there's one specific area you'd like to focus on proactively. Are there old boundaries that actually need reinforcement? Are there new areas in your life that could use a little bit extra protection?
And don't forget to lean on humility and wisdom as you create these boundaries. Proverbs 11:2 reminds us of the importance of humility and keeping these safeguards in place. It's not about restricting each other. It's about creating a safe and loving environment where you both feel protected and valued. So we encourage you to set boundaries together. Start with these areas that we talked about. Write down your boundaries and review them regularly. This will help keep you both accountable and committed to honoring these safeguards.
And find someone that you can trust, that you can both trust, maybe a mentor or another couple who can actually hold you accountable to those boundaries. We've had many of those couples and mentors in our lives. Having that extra layer of support is actually going to help you keep on track and make it easier to stay true to your real commitment.
So setting these safeguards may feel challenging at first, but remember, they are ultimately a gift to your marriage. They create a space of trust and peace where your relationship can then thrive.
Exactly. Being proactively and safeguarding your marriage, you're building that strong foundation that actually honors God and each other. It's an act of love that will only strengthen the bond over time.
So take this step with intention, knowing that every boundary you set is an investment in a strong, resilient marriage.
We're cheering you on as you set these safeguards and protect the beautiful covenant of marriage that God has blessed you with.